Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Cisco Virtual Learning Series. This is Ria Kala from Cisco, and just a few reminders before we start. For uninterrupted viewing experience, can we make sure that we have a stable internet connection? Do mute your microphone when you're not speaking. The use of headphones is highly recommended for better audio quality. And don't forget to ask your questions on the chat box at any given time. I will be moderating this event today, so I welcome you. Before I turn us over to our speaker, I am glad to introduce an industry best to head us and open us for this event. Please welcome Ms. Justine Chuateng from PLDT Enterprise.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Cisco's Virtual Learning Series. This is Justine Chuateng from PLDT Enterprise. Well, the past 2 months have been challenging for all of us. But unlike most industries, the BFSI sector finds itself in a very unique position. As the cornerstone of the economy, the industry simply cannot shut down. Yet, as a largely traditional brick and mortar industry, it also cannot proceed with business as usual by deploying band aid solutions to enable work from home. More so, consistent, intelligent, and secure connectivity is in demand more than ever. Today, we will share with you how we can increase reliability, improve application performance, provide branch breakout to internet, and of course, at the same time, ensure network visibility and secure networking through PLDT managed SD-WAN service from Cisco. Warren Buffett, who is one of the most successful inventors in the world, said, predicting rain doesn't count, building arcs does. As you can see, the current landscape is still uncertain. We're all on equal footing and common ground. But it's precisely this setup that will allow us to take our business further and transform the local banking industry. By defining what we can improve internally, we will be able to identify what changes can be made to improve the overall customer experience. And now, to share with us Cisco and PLDT's move towards digitization, please welcome Danny Smulders. He is the APJC Regional Manager for SD1 Cisco. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that introduction. And everyone, I hope you can see me. Welcome to this virtual event. It's what something we refer to in Cisco as the new normal. As was just pointed out, our world has changed quite dramatically in the past couple of months. I myself, I'm based out of Singapore, and I barely made it back from Europe before Singapore shut down the border. So, we're all impacted in one way or the other. Some people more severe than others, but one thing is for sure, it is impacting all of us. And as such, it also is sort of a segue to my presentation. And some of you may have seen this joke circulating around on the internet, right? Who led the digital transformation of your company? Was it one of the C levels? And many people are saying it was COVID-19. And so what we're seeing, and what I've personally been seeing in conversations that I'm having with C levels in some of our largest customers, is the emergence of what will probably be a new cross-functional role. And whether we're going to call that the chief risk officer or the chief business continuity officer, I think the jury is still out in terms of what that title will be, but it's very clear what that role will be, right? And that role will be to understand, how do we keep the business running? And the business in many cases has two sides of the house, right? Obviously, there's the obvious front of the house, which is how do we keep interacting with customers? How do we keep engaging with customers? How do we keep them spending? How do we keep them consuming our services? But none of that matters if the back of the house isn't capable of dealing with this. And so what we're seeing is really a new function that is supposed to look at this in any organization, cross-functional across all of the silos. And instead of calling it digital transformation, we're really starting to call it digital survival. And it's one of my preferred expressions. And when we go to the next slide, you'll see why I like to use it. Because clearly, nobody planned for this, right? And even if we did some planning, nobody was expecting anything to the extent of this. And so, if we just look at traffic that started hitting the internet, where we saw, record spikes that we never saw before. We saw the likes of Netflix and YouTube cut down streaming video bit rates in order to reduce the bandwidth or the impact that they would have on the internet. Microsoft saw an increase of more than 700% in its public cloud usage. We're seeing many corporations, and if we're being honest, even Cisco, had a, let's call it a challenge at one point in time, where corporate VPNs that were, originally built to deal with people working from home, and probably built to deal with 20, 30% of the people working from home. But that infrastructure was never built to deal with 80 plus percent people working from home. So that's created a whole slew of new challenges. Now, having multiple people connect to your network, be it from home or micro offices, has created multiple new attack vectors. So obviously security has become a concern. And if we bring it a little bit closer to home, and this is what probably many, if not all of you have been seeing in the Philippines, is digital banking or your digital branch has now become your single most busy and your single most important branch. And so many of the banks were saying that they saw an uptake of up to 300-400% of their digital banking, and they were contemplating what is it that we need to do. Same in Singapore, right? Cashless transactions, as people avoid to exchange physical banknotes, spiked, and that started hitting systems. And even in Hong Kong, which has always been our flagship in terms of financial transactions in our region, the insurance transaction surge led to massive spikes, especially when you consider that some of the branches had to shut down. So as you can tell, it's a very wide range of industries that have been hit with this. I would say we're still fortunate to be in an industry such as ICT, such as banking, that hasn't been dramatically hit, like say hospitality, call centers. All of those have been hit in ways that we cannot even imagine. So that really gives us a problem statement, right? And that problem statement isn't new. It isn't something that occurred as a result of COVID-19. But what COVID-19 has really emphasized is the need for a strategy and a digital transformation strategy that considers this possibility. And if there's one thing that we've learned is that it's no longer just a slim possibility. It's an absolute reality. And if you think in terms of COVID-19, we're seeing the United States, we're seeing Europe that are stepping back from lockdowns. And that's going to be an interesting thing to see what happens there. Here in Asia, we're a little bit more conservative, right? I believe Singapore is still locked down until the end of this month, might be extended. We're seeing similar things in Indonesia and India. So I'll be really curious to see if and when a second wave would hit. And that is really the crux of what I'm driving at here, is the reality of this COVID-19 being something somewhat similar to other large pandemics that we've seen in the past is pretty realistic. We're going to see this come back in probably 6 monthly waves, up until a point where either we have a vaccine or we reach enough what we call herd immunity for less of the people to be impacted. But so back to our problem statement, right? So how do I easily connect, what's pointed out here as a remote workforce, but even a branch, right? How do I connect the branch? It's not unthinkable that we're going to resume working probably in different shifts, where we're going to start dispatching people again to the branch, and where we start opening the branch with all sorts of social distancing measures put in place. So if we are thinking about rolling out something that addresses some of our concerns, how do I connect that, right? How do I get this up and running? Because we can no longer rely on people to come back to the office and and have something installed on their laptops if they're a remote worker, or we can no longer rely on dispatching engineers out there and spending time in all of these branches. That's just become more of a challenging situation today. So that's one. Secondly, and this is a really important one, and I've spoken at many events in the Philippines where this is really has always been top of the list, but has become particularly more stringent in the last couple of weeks. And that is, how do we ensure that business critical applications have consistent and optimal performance? And I'm deliberately separating these two because they mean two different things. People are, or users, I should say, are generally okay if something is a little slow or sluggish, but only if that is in a consistent way. And what I mean with that is, if I click submit on the bottom of some form that I'm submitting on a web server, and I'm used to it taking 3 to 5 seconds to actually accept that submit and process, and it happens consistently, hey, I'll accept that as my normal, and this is the behavior of my application. However, if sometimes that takes a second or less, and sometimes it takes 10 or 20 seconds, you get that inconsistency, and that's really where users start complaining. So that's one thing. Optimal means, how do we make sure that those business critical applications at all times get the network resources that they need? And so Cisco and many partners such as PLDT have rolled out things like MPLS, and MPLS has probably been around, if I think about it, probably 20 plus years now, that does a thing called classes of service. What we notice is that that's A, too static, and B, probably doesn't give us enough agility in all of the applications that we currently have on our infrastructure, right? We no longer just have 2 or 3 or 5 applications. On average, what we're seeing, especially in large banks, is if they're global, they're having 300 to 700 applications on their network. So the ability to squeeze those 3 or up to 700 applications into a limited set of classes of service is no longer enough. And so what you get is you get applications fighting for network resource. And then you get things like brownout, right? And to the point I made on my previous slide, when we were talking about building VPN infrastructure, the very core of a VPN is that you take connectivity from a remote location, be it a remote worker or a remote branch, take all of that traffic, it goes to this funnel which sits at the data center, and then it might use applications locally in a data center, or it may break out to the internet from that data center and then go to public clouds and things like that. So what we're getting is, really, by tromboning all of that traffic into the data center, we really get traffic and applications fighting with one another. And that is an additional challenge that we've seen, especially in the past, I would say, 2 months. And then last but not least, as I pointed out with that snippet from the Australian government, is, how do I secure everything and everyone? By the way, if you guys have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat box. I'll be more than happy to address them at the end of my deck. So that brings us to SD-WAN architecture and some of the trends that we've been seeing in APJC and probably in ASEAN first. It's been interesting to see how banks in the Philippines, in Indonesia, in Thailand have been earlier adopters than, say, banks in Singapore. And a lot of that has to do with some of the things that we have here. And so I'll start on the left-hand side of the screen, where we say it really is any kind of service that you could run across any kind of transport, right? And those two things combined is really what makes SD-WAN so powerful, right? We still have locations, say in the Philippines, where we're running connectivity off VSAT, especially in some of the remote islands. In Indonesia, there's actually a bank, a government bank, that runs more than 8,000 sites on their own, yes, you heard it correctly, their own VSAT network, right? So this is some of the challenges that some of the banks in our part of the world have to go through in order just to get basic connectivity or basic transport. So the good thing with SD-WAN is it runs on anything as long as it's IP enabled. And so a second trend that we're picking up is, and we saw this in Thailand first, is that, and when you see on the right-hand side here, 5G LTE, basically mobile data, we're seeing the adoption of LTE, 5G to a lesser extent, as not only the backup for sites, but in some cases the primary connectivity for locations that are really remote. So rather than going through terrestrial, which can be shaky, and if we think in terms of the Philippines, where you're being hit with 22 typhoons a year, terrestrial infrastructure is always one of the first that suffers. It's usually the mobile data that is being brought up first. So the ability to run business critical applications on a network that doesn't really care about what kind of transport sits under it is truly unique. And as such, we can deliver that same optimal and consistent quality of experience on any of those transports in any of those locations, remote as they may be. So what that means is we're no longer bogged down by basic VPN architectures, right? And if you look at it, what this is a highly simplified diagram, right? If you have an office or a home office or anyone that wants to connect to SD-WAN, rather than going through a VPN to a data center to then break out to things like internet and software as a service applications, or even infrastructure as a service applications, all of these things are connected directly to SD-WAN. And what that means is you no longer put the brunt of the bandwidth utilization just on that VPN infrastructure. You can start using what we call direct internet access from the home, and therefore no longer have that traffic going through your VPN, going through your data center, and then breaking out to the internet in the end. What is important with that, though, is a couple of things. One is what we like to refer to as ZTP, or zero touch provisioning. In this particular case, we're calling it zero touch deployment. But what it basically means is, thanks to SD-WAN, and I'll get into detail in a little bit, you could actually ship a router or a device to a remote location, and anyone that can plug in a power cord can bring up a site. And the reason for that is that box, as soon as it's connected, will either use Ethernet or will use mobile data to call home, download its deployment, download its profile and its configuration, and will go online automatically. So extremely simple to deploy, no additional software required. So obviously, this needs to be scalable, and it needs to bring security, things that we're addressing as well. What is really key, though, is that we're looking at centralized management in one single console. And this is what we call Cisco's vManage, which is really a single console from where you can switch on your network services, but also bring in your security needs as you need them. And all of that goes through a very simple GUI or graphical user interface. So that means we now have a whole suite of security, and I can break them down into two parts, really. One of them is what we call on-prem security, right? And this is really what I would like to call the legacy model, where every branch or every remote location is potentially at risk, and therefore we probably need a firewall there, and that firewall needs to be geared up to deal with the traffic and the complexity of that particular site. And that means, even if you upgrade the bandwidth a little bit of that branch, you may end up having to buy a more expensive firewall box or a license. So scalability is not really something that exists with on-prem security, but just know that in case you need it, we are able to run on-prem security features on top of our router. So you get a more simplified setup, a single box that deals with multiple purposes. Now, what we're seeing, especially in Thailand, is the adoption of cloud security. And I go back to some of the limitations that we see in on-prem security. right? If you need to gear up your scale, if you need to do upgrades, if you need to do anything that would impact your on-site bandwidth or utilization, you probably have a cost allocated to that. You probably have a deployments and a project schedule that goes with that. So if you keep things in the cloud, that scalability is instantaneous. You increase your site's bandwidth, you go to your vManage, you increase whatever entitlements you would need from a security perspective as well. So those things go really hand in hand. Deployment is kept easy, as I mentioned before. No need for anyone to go on site. No need to scale your security infrastructure on premise in function of what your needs may be on premise. You could really push that into the cloud. So it's a pretty busy slide, and I'm not going to go through this in detail. But what we basically say is that Cisco's SD-WAN comes with a bundle of capabilities. And so that bundle of capabilities are both on the network routing and SD-WAN perspective, but as well with some of the security features bundled. And we've broken it down into three main subscriptions. Left-hand side, you have what I would say essentials, which is really for smaller, cost-conscious customers. We've got our DNA Advantage, which sits in the middle there. This is what we probably sell 95% of the cases in APJC. And this takes all of the good things from Essentials, but does add quite a bit of security features. And then on the right-hand side, we've got our DNA Premier, which we'd like to refer to as our Rolls-Royce of SD-WAN subscriptions, which takes all of the good things from Essentials, all the good things of Advantage, and even adds additional security layers on top of that. So really a security and networking powerhouse. But what about the new normal, right? And this is something that we referred to earlier in the presentation, right? And this is just one of the use cases that we see, right? And in this particular case, we're saying COVID-19 expands around the globe, right? What you see on the left-hand side, it's likely to be, wave 2 or wave 3 of COVID-19 hitting us. And we'll go back to what happens here, right? Local authorities encouraging or even enforcing, if you talk about Singapore, to initiate work from home, or to look at very smaller offices or some very stringent social distance requirements, which means IT will want to enable the same experience that employees would have working in the office or working in the branch, and have that either at home for these smaller branches. And so that's where we're going to secure a zero-touch model. We deploy with 4G or 5G where it's available, immediately enabling and guaranteeing MOS scores for video or voice data, and add on the security needs that would come with that. And all we need to do is set up a logistics process, right? It is get the boxes, get them shipped to their destination. And as I mentioned earlier, anyone that could plug in 1 or 2 cables can really bring up a site, and this 10, maybe even 5 years ago would have been science fiction, right? But this is an absolute reality today. So employees receive the device, connect it to the network, and right away they're up and running, zero-touch provisioning. So how do I easily connect? I think we've addressed that, right? It's really that zero-touch provisioning. It is making sure that everything runs from a central console. Your IT staff can run this from home and actually do a full SD-WAN rollout without any engineers having to be dispatched on site. Again, science fiction 5 years ago, reality now. How do we ensure that we've got business critical applications with consistent and optimal performance? That's really our quality of experience, right? It's the technology, and the SD stands for software defined, to really make sure that all of your critical applications get the network resources they need at all times. And then last but not least, our security in terms of addressing everything and anything that's connected, be it remote, be it in the branch, be it in the cloud, that all of those data streams are connected. We offer both on-prem and cloud solutions that address all of that from a security perspective. So with that, I'm at the end of my presentation, and I'd be very happy to take any questions if you have them.
Hi, Danny. We do have one question on the box, and it's from Kevin. So for a company which relied on on-premise systems with VPN for a long time,
Mhm.
Do you suggest or recommend that they do to transition into the cloud?
So this is something that is happening organically, right? Many countries, many companies are really adopting everything that we know. And Ria, you will know this. We went through this with Cisco as well. We went Office 365. That really is the first transition to cloud that you could do. It helps in a sense that if you set up Office 365 for your remote workers or your remote branches, and they would be running on what I would call SD-WAN with direct internet access, that traffic no longer has to go to the data center to then go on the internet to then go to Office 365. It happens right there at the very start of the branch, right? And what we're seeing is more and more companies, including banks, are still running MPLS as their prime connectivity. It is secure. It gives you to a level quality of experience. It is things that are delivered by our partners such as PLDT. But what we're seeing on the other hand is bringing up internet as a backup. And rather than just using that as VPN, as Kevin pointed out here, why don't we maximize that connectivity if it's there anyway and use that to have direct internet access? So I hope that answers part of the question.
Okay, thanks, Danny. That's all we have for your segment.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. And good luck today, everyone. Stay healthy. Bye bye.
All right. Next up, I'm happy to introduce Mr. Ronald Van Clunen, who heads the ASEAN SD-WAN sales in Cisco. So, Ron, if you're ready, you might want to go ahead.
Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes and yes.
Yes and yes. Okay, very good. So welcome everybody. So yeah, like Danny explained, in this special times we have to do everything remotely. So I stole actually the headset of my kids, as you can see. So you have clear audio. So we're going to focus on software-defined wide area network, digital transformation strategies, and actually why we want to have end-to-end intent-based networking. We call it also the secure, intelligent, software-defined wide area network, cloud edge. So we work closely together with PLDT, and that's why we're doing this seminar to embrace and force actually as a growing factor in the Philippines. So if you look at the digitalization, it's actually not a one-to-one transformation, right? So we're not going to copy that rotary item on that telephone to our mobile phone, because then you still need to remember all the numbers, and how inconvenient was it every time to dial that number. Now, with this exponential growth of those mobile devices, the mobile phones, the tablets, and so on, also the type of applications getting installed on the devices is changing, right? So you have your company owned devices with your own applications you develop, which you need for your business, for your financial transactions, for your insurances, and so on. And sometimes you also allow BYOD, bring your own device, and bring BYOA, bring your own applications on those phones. And that can be Facebook, that can be Viber, WhatsApp, and so on. Now, all those applications, they require, as Danny mentioned, QoE, quality of experience, quality of service, because it is video traffic, voice traffic, data traffic, and each of those applications has their own needs to connect to those applications, either hosted in your data center or maybe move to the cloud, right? Like the Facebooks, the Netflix, and so on. Now, because of this, of these mobile devices and the mobility in the enterprise, in the organization, that means that your Wi-Fi network also need to be ready for that, right? Because there is a limited number of devices that can be connected to that access points. So that is the first connectivity you have between your mobile device and the rest of the network. But it concatenates, and I will visualize that later for you. But the thing is, if the end user or the employee is using that application and it doesn't work, it is always the Wi-Fi doesn't work or the network doesn't work. But where is actually the root cause of this experience? Now, if you look at the roadmap to digital transformation, we have on the left side digitization. That was the example I just gave you, right? Only moving the rotary functionality to a digitized format. We look into digitalization, so that's leveraging the process technologies to take advantage of digitized content. But a lot of organizations are in this transformation, digital transformation, changing the way how you do your business and actually operate, and how can you anticipate on that. Now, here are some examples of business drivers for financial services. So I just took a few examples because the way how we operate nowadays is we don't go often to the bank branch anymore. But it means that the functionality and the services are also going to change the way how you are delivering that to your end users. And Danny gave that example already with mobile banking, so that those applications are installed on your mobile device. And that's how we do financial transactions. But you can also create your mobile workforce where your employees are going out to the customers with those mobile applications to, for example, sign up your customer for an insurance or any of the other services you normally support in the bank branches. So that is all kind of changing, and not only in the financial industry, but also in other vertical markets like healthcare, manufacturing, education. We see this change globally. Now, to come back to that troubleshooting item, so on the left side we have those mobile end users, mobile devices, and there are a lot of factors involved. What can actually impact the wireless connectivity between those devices and your access points and the rest of the infrastructure. And then we go on further through the chain. So you have the office, the wireless LAN controllers, managing those Wi-Fi access points, then the wide area network, HQ, and then in your data center, you run all kind of other type of services to do, for example, authentication from, is this client able to connect to the network? Is he allowed to connect to the network? IP addresses need to be issued to those mobile devices. And that all comes from a centralized location, typically, like HQ. Now, if you want to troubleshoot this network and your end users are having a wireless problem, what do you typically do? You send your Wi-Fi engineer to that remote location. Now, if that remote location is not in Metro Manila, but somewhere in Batangas or maybe in another location, Banaue, very far away, that has a lot of operational cost to travel to that location and to do the troubleshooting. And guess what? He cannot find the problem. The Wi-Fi looks okay, connectivity looks okay, the RF signals looks okay, but there's a lot of cost involved. And what is actually the root cause? That's a very simple example. No IP addresses are issued to those remote clients. Where do the IP addresses come from? All the way on the right side from the data center. So the idea is to, with a digital network architecture, to implement a management system, a monitoring system, to collect proactively all the information of the Wi-Fi access points, the wireless controllers, the wide area network, and that you get kind of end-to-end visibility, how those applications actually connect, where is actually the root cause of the problem, but also the way how you change your business and how you're going to utilize the skills you're going to use to troubleshoot this problem. So that means the Wi-Fi engineer, the wired engineer, the security person, the application person, the help desk, all those persons are involved troubleshooting this problem. But you can change in your network operations center or security operations center the way to utilize those skills of those people to fasten the troubleshooting process. And that's actually where Cisco is heading, is a multi-domain strategy connecting all those components together. Now, if you look on traditional networks, and that actually relates to the question Kevin was asking as well. So you see a lot of traditional networks. Well, in the past, we did manual connections like you see on the left side, and that evolved to automated type of setup of connections. But if you look in the picture in the middle, you see the end users, they connect to the campus, to the wide area network, to the data center. Some customers still use traditional mainframe services to do your financial transactions, as an example. But if you need to go to cloud-based applications, like you see a big migration to Microsoft Office 365 on the cloud, why should that traffic go through your data center, to the network parameter, to the internet? That is going to clog up your internet connections because of the amount of data that need to be sent. for all those end users, all those clients of Office 365 to the end users' laptops. Now, similarly for Windows 10 updates, if you have that running in your organization, similarly for SAP, Salesforce.com, and so on. Yeah, Netflix. I'm not sure if your employees allowed Netflix in your organization, but that clogs up a lot of bandwidth as well. So we need to be more smart the way how the applications are routed, connected to the cloud. So what you see with Cisco's digital network architecture, or we actually call it intent-based networking strategy, is that we glue everything together. So we have the users, the Internet of Things and other devices connected to the campus again, but that connects to the software-defined wide area network, to the cloud edge, and the cloud edge is the connectivity to still applications you need to run in your data center, and because those applications can be bandwidth hungry maybe, like maybe computer-aided design type of applications, or maybe confidential information you don't want to stay on the cloud. And then the rest, the infrastructure as a service and software as a service as well. Now, the connectivity of SD-WAN will help you also distributing policies, like for example, quality of service policies to all those different branch locations, but also security policies. Because you as an end user, if you move from one branch location to another branch location, you want to have the same type of experience connecting to the network, but also the same type of security in those locations. And that's actually where the multi-domain factor comes into play, where actually those security policies, quality of service policies are interconnected between the campus branch and the SD-WAN, but also to the direction of the cloud and to the data center. So that's really important. Okay, so again, here is visualized one more time. So we have the XLAs, the experience level agreements. So that is the quality of experience the end users have and the other type of devices connecting to your wireless access points, connecting to the branch offices where we typically have the access layer with Catalyst 9K, switches, distribution core connected to your data center, and connected to the cloud with software-defined wide area network. But to manage and to monitor that end-to-end, we have different type of tools who actually can collect all this information centrally and proactively give that information to the network operations center. So that's called Cisco Digital Network Architecture. It integrates with ISE, the Identity Service Engine, to enforce those security policies throughout the whole infrastructure. Then we have vManage to manage the wide area network connections, and ACI for the data center. And all those tools are actually getting interconnected, and that is Cisco's vision for the multi-domain strategy. Why do we do that? It's for the end-to-end assurance and compliance of those applications so that the end users have a better experience. Okay, so back to the wide area network. So these are typically issues we see at customers: insufficient bandwidth because of those mobile growth, right? Of all those applications consuming bandwidth. So that is typically an issue. Also, actually, how those connections are utilized. So typically MPLS is used, and then internet as a backup in case MPLS fails. And we need to address it with SD-WAN to maybe create active links so that you actually utilize the maximum bandwidth. But also you can distribute the applications over those links, and that will help in the quality of experience as well, because we get better performance, but also kind of redundancy in case one link is having some latency or some jitter. Maybe the other link can take that over. Another important aspect is the application visibility. A lot of customers actually don't know how much bandwidth is used or which applications are consuming all this bandwidth on the network. So if you have visibility into that, then you can make business decisions, right? From, okay, that application I actually don't allow on my network, so we want to secure it and eliminate it consuming all those bandwidth, for example. But we also can reroute applications maybe to a faster route or prioritize it, right? So you need to have that visibility. Now, fragmented security is an important one because of compliance and regulations. Like the banks in Philippines probably have to comply to the Banco Central Filipinas kind of regulations that security has been implemented, segment your data, for example, between IoT devices and your employees. So how do you make sure? How do you standardize that for all your branch locations? and not with manual configurations, but you want to do that with one push on the button, and bam, all your branch locations are standardized on security. Now, that goes on. Cloud readiness applications. So if you have legacy applications, maybe still running on the mainframe, maybe they need to be transformed to cloud-based applications where you also get better performance with those applications. And those applications are more modern because people want to use their mobile devices to do those bank transactions. Scalability is important, really important. We see that typically in the Philippines, but like Danny mentioned, also in Thailand, in Singapore, Malaysia, because of the coverage of your organizations, you need to be able to scale. For ATM locations, for example, getting connected to the internet is important. And then the cost and the operations involved. As I showed you with the troubleshooting picture earlier on, it can cost a lot, right? If you cannot find the problem really fast, what kind of technical impact does it have? But most importantly, what kind of business impact does it have for your organization if people cannot make use of those services? That's something you really need to get insight into it. Now, this is the same picture Danny was showing about the SD-WAN architecture. So basically, the hardware is separated from the software. So that's why we call it software-defined wide area network architecture. But it gives flexibility because the transport layer you see here, like satellite, internet, MPLS, 5G, LTE connections, is the underlay. So that's kind of independent of all the configurations and all the benefits SD-WAN is going to give you. Like, for example, like Danny mentioned, zero-touch provisioning, which is called automation, right? So if you're going to expand with more branches, or you have a company takeover and those need to be enabled, then automation is an important part to make sure that that business gets into a service as soon as possible. So automation is important, but also things like DIA, direct internet access, like actually having a better connectivity between those branch locations and the cloud to make use of those Microsoft Office 365 type of applications. No, so there are many benefits. So it is important, what do you want to achieve in your organization, in your business, and how can actually SD-WAN help you with that? So it is actually the why. Why do you need SD-WAN? Okay, so vManage is the management platform where you get that insight in the application, running over those wide area network connections, but also to set the policies from a centralized location. Now, where do we start in your strategy? Now, what you see here are 5 stages: best effort, manual, semi-automated, automated, and self-driving. And you need to ask yourself, where are you in those 5 levels? Now, you see below the attributes, and the attributes are automation, security, service assurance, analytics, agility, innovation, risk, and cost and complexity. And for each of those attributes and those other items, you want to do an assessment. We call it as is, where you actually are, right? Are you level 1? Are you level 2? Level 3? So that you can set out your strategy. For example, for automation, if you're currently doing a lot of manual configurations to deploy and get your services working, maybe there is a business justification to go to do the automation and the zero-touch provisioning to get it to work. And that will save you in your operational expenses. And similar for security, similar for service assurance, to reduce the downtime, to reduce and improve the experience of the end users. Now, the next slide, you will get it in the handout. It is basically the same thing with more details for yourself to read, to understand where you are. And I think it's a good exercise to go through in your organization. So here in summary, Cisco's digitalization strategy or digital transformation, we actually move from a traditional network which was very hardware-centric to intent-based networking, which is software-driven. So not only on the wide area network, but also in the local area network. We call that software-defined local area network, SD-LAN, but also we call it SD access, software-defined access. And that's important because of the micro-segmentation for those end users. And on the other side, we have the data center, the SDDC, the software-defined data center. So manual actions need to move to automated actions, fragmented security to built-in security, end-to-end, and network data to business insights and typically the application visibility. Now, there are some ebooks which you can download for free. So once you get this presentation, you can click on those links where you can see how Cisco is actually going to those multi-domain strategy for SDX is on the left side, what type of hardware is needed, Catalyst 9000 and IOX platform throughout the whole infrastructure for LAN, but also for the wide area network pieces, Wi-Fi, how that connects, and DNA assurance to do the proactive monitoring and how to take proactive actions. And then what's focused on this presentation is the SD1 component. So you see that it all gets glued together. So that is a summary of my presentation. So business and end user experience, that's what it is all about in an end-to-end network environment. Is there any question, Ria?
Thanks, Ron. No questions on the chat box, but if I can request anybody who'd like to ask a live question to just unmute yourself and maybe ask Ron any versioning questions you may have about SD-WAN. Let's give them a few minutes, Ron.
Okay, if there's no question, after the session, if a question arises, right, from okay, how do I take that approach? Please reach out to the local team, to Ria, and she knows how to find me. I talk almost every day to Ria, and then we can actually see how we can to address that problem. We have a big team helping you in the Philippines, locally, but also remotely.
Yeah, and we have our very good partners, PLDT, to help us with any of the questions. Okay, thanks, Ron. You have a great day. If you can stay on, there might be some questions on the chat box. Please do.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, now to introduce our next presenter, become my very good friend lately. Please welcome our product specialist from the product team, Mario Bolaño Jr. Mario, are you ready?
Hi, Ria.
Hi, how are you?
Hi. Yeah, I'm just setting up my presentation.
Okay. There.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see it. Thank you.
All right. So, how is everyone? So, I hope we're all doing well. This situation really affects us all and is a wake up call, really, about the importance of getting and keeping us all connected. And also during these times, there is an urgent need for businesses to bring more people online. So, in my discussion, I will show you how PLDT is coping with the new normal and how SD-WAN powered by Cisco can help fortify your business continuity. And if you have questions during my presentation or if anything is unclear, please do message me or drop a message in the chat box and we'll discuss that after my presentation. Okay? So this crisis has shown us the critical importance of digital technology. So we made it our mission, PLDT has made it its mission to ensure that our customers are always connected amidst the pandemic. So we also want to enable our customers' digital transformation efforts so you can continue to deliver your businesses online. And lastly, the new normal is for most of us is really working from home or working from a remote location. So we would want to provide options for you into how you can deliver your resources from the office to your employees who are away from your offices. Okay, so in this regard, PLDT Smart strives to help our frontliners and the sectors tasked to fight the virus. So it is in these times really that we really realize the value of communication. And in order for PLDT and Smart to serve you better, we are continuously fortifying our network by increasing our capacity, our fixed capacity, and our wireless coverage. And in the future, in the next few years, we'll also bring you new technologies aside from SD-WAN, such as the wireless 5G in the future. So, with all of that said, how do we further help you maintain your business operations? So in this session, we'll be focusing on two key areas uh, that we know PLDT can help you. So one is how to sustain your essential business operations. Because let's face it, not all Filipinos are using online banking, right? There will be people going to branches. So in turn, banks have to operate branches and there would be employees in the branch. And the bank also has to make sure that ATMs are also available to dispense. So second, for our non-essential workforce, they need to be able to function as well. So they must be provided with access to their tools while working from home. So if your tools are all at the data center or at the office, so how do we securely connect our employees working from home with these tools? So we'll also discuss that later in the presentation. But uh, let's focus first on sustaining your essential business operations. So we have started offering SD-WAN or software-defined WAN since 2018, and the goal is to provide you with options to increase your uptime so that your services are always delivered. So with this technology, you can leverage multiple types of connectivity best fit for your applications. And the good thing is, link or path selection is automated so that your network can react in various link quality conditions and that we wanted to minimize the amount of human intervention in the network. So everything is automated through SD-WAN. So for example, your secondary MPLS that you are paying, right now it may be on standby because, well, your primary link is working, right? But you're still paying for it. So with SD-WAN, we wanted to make sure that all of your investments are are working, or you can actually maximize your investments by utilizing them all at the same time. And in times of brownout situations where links are having degraded qualities, SD-WAN automatically takes care of providing or selecting the best path for your application. So for sites with limited facilities like with sites with limited facilities or wired, fixed, or broadband, even broadband, yes, we have those sites. You can leverage utilizing LTE or wireless because our SD-WAN is capable of wireless as well. So really with SD-WAN, you can choose any type of connectivity that you can provide at your site. So there's no excuse for you to not deliver your businesses or your applications to your workforce and of course eventually to your customers. So to summarize, SD-WAN can be beneficial in increasing your workforce productivity since your applications are always reachable. So the solution is also easy to deploy with centralized monitoring, providing your IT visibility into your whole wide area network. And lastly, whatever connectivity is available, SD-WAN secures your data through VPN technology and application firewall. So if you have any questions regarding these features, you can reach out to your PLDT relationship managers and we can schedule a presentation for your organization and see how SD-WAN can benefit or be tailor fit to your business. And we also have here, I'm showing you our SD-WAN bundles. So our SD-WAN bundles are highly customizable depending on the facilities available per location. But here are our most common offerings. So we have hybrid WAN, which combines the power of MPLS and Internet. So MPLS with its integrity, its reliability, security, and Internet with its higher capacity or higher bandwidth. And you can also add LTE to your existing fixed line service with using SD-WAN. So no third-party wireless route is needed as the Cisco SD-WAN appliance it has a built-in SIM slot and antenna. So you can use this in your mobile and outside ATMs, or if your branch just has wireless signal, you can also utilize LTE and make use of that to deliver your applications in times of brownout uh, or any downtime from your fixed line service. So for information on the pricing, again, please reach out to your PLD relationship. So now let's move on to our second strategy, which is providing secure connectivity to remote workers. So the SD-WAN appliance can be pre-configured and delivered to our employees so that they can establish the secure connectivity to your office network, even if they're using home broadband, right? But the question is, how do we secure it? Because we're accessing private data of the business, or we're accessing uh, tools in the office which we want to keep secure, but they're using broadband or internet. So we don't want to expose that level of information to the public, right? So with SD-WAN, it takes care of the security using VPN technologies and uh, application firewalling. So you can also limit the applications that you want to have your employees to be able to access. And of course, a great benefit for our IT who's in skeletal workforce is they will be able to monitor the whole usage of the network. So they have visibility to the applications running on your network and which applications are actually hugging more bandwidth. So SD-WAN provides all of that. And there are much more benefits of SD-WAN to your operations. Unfortunately, we have a very limited time today, but we can always schedule a dedicated presentation. But the goal here really of this session is that SD-WAN, aside from increasing your branch uptime, it can also extend the operations or the accessibility of your applications to your work from home employees so that your network becomes smarter, simpler, and more secure. And aside from SD-WAN, we also have the other offerings for the banking industry. So from SD-WAN to managed service desk, to contact center, cybersecurity, and all of our domestic data services or fixed line services, wireless. So these are all the PLDT ecosystem, and we can always discuss this in detail with you. Just reach out to me. So again, my name is Mario. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for this session. And if you have any questions, please let us. Thank you.
Thanks, Mario. I just received two questions
Yes,
from,
Ria.
from our participants today. I think the first question is a little bit tough. How does PLDT commercially price your SD-WAN solution?
That's a good question, Ria. Unfortunately, I can say the numbers today because it really differs upon the connectivity or branch of the site. But it's the SD-WAN is designed to measure the peer or the bandwidth of the connectivity that you're going to connect to SD-WAN. So let's say I have a 2 Mbps MPLS link and I have an 8 Mbps internet link. So combining that, you have 10 Mbps in total. So that's the SD-WAN throughput that we're going to. And if you have any, or if you want to know the detailed pricing for your organization or for your business, please reach out to us. We're happy to help.
Okay, thank you, Mario. There's another question that came in. If one of the connections is a non-PLDT line, can it still connect to the PLDT SD-WAN solution?
Okay, so we always get that question, and we understand that SD-WAN, the goal of SD-WAN is to provide you with more options or redundancy. And if that redundancy you can be achieved by using multiple telco or service provider deals, yes, we allow termination of non-PLDT service to our customer. So the answer is yes.
The answer is yes, but it would
Yes.
be nice if it's all on PLDT.
Yeah, we
Right.
have different platforms that are diverse or on different networks or to be separated. But yeah, if you have other services that you wanted to incorporate into SD,
Okay. So
certainly allow that.
thank you, Mario. There's additional questions on the chat box from Lala. Not sure if you can pick this up, Mario, but is the fear of health hazards caused by 5G pretty valid?
Okay, so there has not been a scientific study that has shown 5G has any health hazards. We are in the Philippines. We have, I think, more than two cities already flying out 5G. And I think the story really came from different theories regarding the coronavirus. Really, but no, it's there's no scientific evidence that 5G has any.
Okay. And last question also from Lala. What is the current adoption rate of SD-WAN in the Philippines, particularly for Jacine segment BFSI? And I think you're the perfect person to
That's a good
answer this.
question. Yeah, we have started SD1 for the past 3 years. Again, like for cloud adoption, especially for the banks who are more on the private sector, right? The adoption is quite slow, to be honest with you. But we are seeing now the regulators of the banking industry, even some of the commercial banks are looking into moving some of their applications to cloud, not all of them, because there's an existing DSP regulation still. So the question is, how are they going to deliver, let's say, Office 365 to their employees if they're really private network? So with SD-WAN, they can get a balance of a hybrid network by leveraging the security over internet and, of course, maintaining your core banking operations via the MPLS. So we have a few customers on the commercial banking industry. Most of our customers right now are in the trial stage. They're evaluating the SD-WAN, and hopefully we get to onboard more banking or more banking customers this year. We're looking forward to that.
So is it safe to say that your team can do a proof of concept with our customers as part of
Yes,
the process of evaluating?
yes, we do PLDT. PLDT does, but since SD-WAN is a new technology, we understand that you wanted to see how it works in your network, how it pans out. But yeah, just again, reach out to your
Okay.
relationship managers and you can schedule it.
So Jefferson has a question regarding security. So is SD-WAN solution in the event of an attack secure since it is connected on the cloud? So just a
Okay,
quick
uh,
technical
a little
explanation,
bit
Mario.
technical, but yeah. The quick answer to that is the SD-WAN box or the router that dials is actually all of the traffic from outside is essentially blocked, except for the VPNs, right? The tunnels established between servers. But if you're opening the traffic to the internet, have an application level firewall, we can also install, or we can connect your SD-WAN to Cisco's secure internet gateway so that all your traffic is being filtered. Any incoming traffic is also scanned and filtered. So that you can make sure that when you expose your network or your branch network to the internet, it's always protected.
Okay, that's great to know. If there are no more questions, Mario, I think you're off the hook.
Thank
And
you, Ria, and
for-
thank you guys. If you have any more additional questions, just reach out to the chat box and we'll be happy to answer.
so yeah, for those asking or who arrived late, we will be sharing some of the information post event and the slides as well, and information on that will be handled by the PLDT group. So with that, I'll probably say thank you if there are no more questions. Thank you to the team and to everyone who's joined today. I pray that you are safe and God bless all of you. And I hope to see you again in a virtual event soon with PLDT. So thank you all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Justine, thank you.